Today on CityCast Boise, President Trump is claiming mail-in ballots can't be trusted. So how are local officials responding? Meanwhile, the latest living wage report has us asking, do you make enough to afford to live in Ada County in 2025? Plus, there's a cozy new shop where books and cooking classes come together. It's Friday, August 22nd. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Happy Friday, and joining me this week to break down the week's biggest headlines is friend of the show, Matthew Melton, for his very first Friday News Roundup show. Thank you so much for being here today, Matthew.
Hey, Lindsay. Happy Fair Friday to all.
I wanted to start with a headline that is being talked about nationally, but also hits home here in Boise. And that is that Trump has called for mail-in ballots to cease, that we're just not going to do that anymore, and then also called voting machines unreliable. Now, our Secretary of State, Phil McGrain, has put in a lot of effort into our voting machines, into accuracy. That's been a big focus of his. And so the Idaho Statesman ran an article asking him about Trump's comments and about whether these voting systems are inaccurate or causing massive voter fraud. And I was curious, what are your thoughts on his response? What are your thoughts on this conversation nationally, but also here in Boise?
Yeah, can we just sort of start wide and just say big lie go burr? I mean, I guess he has to say that that's the case, because if he's going to continue to if he's going to continue to posit that the 2020 election was stolen, which he still does, then of course he's going to have to throw shade on our institutions, our voting institutions, our machines, our voting by mail. And I have to say, I have a little bit of sympathy for the infrastructure in Idaho, many of whom are, ran by Republicans, that are having to thread the needle of maybe trying to walk back those statements or clarify or categorize those statements, while at the same time saying, no, that's actually not. But how do you say that to the person who is effectively running your party, where it's like, no, it's fine. It's actually fine. That's not true. But you can't come out and call Trump a liar. I mean, I can. He's lying. But you can't if you're the Secretary of State, I guess.
Yeah, no, I don't envy them the tightrope that, from my perspective, they have put themselves into, where they have to try to portray accurate information while also not directly saying that Trump is lying when he speaks. So I don't envy them that position. But Phil McGrain did come out and say that our voting machines are highly reliable, that they go through incredibly thorough testing. And he was even very specific that the counties that count votes by hand, like some of the least populous counties where, they're counting a few hundred ballots, that's where the most frequent errors occur. It's not with the voting machines, it's human error.
I saw that as well. I thought that was an interesting thing to point out. If we're trying to say that, if this is sort of this Terminator 2 era Skynet, we don't want machines deciding our elections. It's like, well, they're not. They're counting the stuff. And if your bar for an accurate election is a human doing the counting, they're going to get it wrong more often. And I think that's what the Secretary of State is trying to say here, which I think is fascinating. And it really kind of, I think, blows a hole in the argument that machine voting or voting machines aren't safe. And it's only doing damage, right, to kind of the bedrock institution of voting, which is a real bummer.
It almost feels like it is an effort to just completely disenfranchise people from voting by saying that it doesn't work, it's not reliable, it's not accurate, it's highly misleading, and there's so much fraud. And I mean, Phil McGrain was pretty clear, when people hand count ballots, there have been altered ballots. It's just thinking about going back to, we'll just hand count it. That's not error-free. That's not fraud-free. That there was a reason they went to machines in the first place.
Absolutely. And let's not I think hand ballot counting is taking some shots here. That is also like it's less secure, but it's still pretty secure. Like our voting mechanism, our apparatus is extremely secure. It's some of the most secure voting systems in the world on planet Earth. So while that's less secure, it's by no means a liability or any sort of like compromising thing, such that like we can rely on the veracity of our voting results, whether they're hand counted or not. That's just the opportunity. I'll say this: the opportunity for doing anything, trying to monkey with the vote in such a way that it would sway an election would be nigh impossible. I've actually volunteered with the Ada County Elections Board the last couple of election cycles, and it is, first of all, a well-oiled machine. It is a lot of people working very, very, very hard, like our friends and neighbors who are working very hard into the night to make sure that this process is safe, secure, that it's done quickly, that if we don't have a definitive winner, that we're the wheels are turning to get one as quickly as possible. It's a lot of very dedicated public servants who are working very, very hard. And I will say, there is really not, having worked on the floor when the ballots are coming in, there's not any opportunity to mess with them at all. Like it's not. So when he's saying that the voting machines are insecure, I don't know what he's talking about. There's just no opportunity to do anything. There just isn't.
Yeah. And Matthew, if you don't mind sharing, it's kind of a personal question, but have you ever voted by mail-in ballot?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that, like many of our friends and neighbors, I voted by absentee balloting or mail-in balloting. I think the first time in 2020 when, COVID was a going concern. Not that it isn't right now, but, there's a lot of anxiety about showing up, waiting in long lines to vote in person. And, it turns out it's extremely easy and convenient. And I think a lot of people are doing it now because, let's be honest, voting in person is a huge pain. It stinks. It's on a Tuesday. Everyone's working. I think that Election Day should be a national holiday, and I know there's a huge movement to make it that way. And this is sort of a huge step in the wrong direction to make it harder to vote with removing mail-in balloting and making voting machines harder. It is. I think you nailed it. We're chasing the specter of voter fraud while at the same time suppressing the vote and disenfranchising the vote, which kind of feels like the point, don't you think?
Exactly. Yeah. Every time that I've used an absentee ballot, it's simple, it's straightforward. You can check and see that your ballot was counted. So you know that it went through, you know that they accepted your signature. It's just very efficient and it increases access. And I'm always in favor of increasing access to people's ability to vote. And Phil McGrain was very specific that about 20% of all the ballots cast in the past two elections were absentee and mail-in. Like, that's not a small number. And
that's huge.
It was, people serving in the military overseas, which if we're making it harder for our military to vote, we are going in the wrong direction. Like, I just full stop.
Yeah, we lost the plot at that point, for sure.
And like, Mormon missionaries are able to vote that way. Micron employees overseas, people who are homebound, people who just, have to work on, Election Tuesday, like you said, because it's not a national holiday like it is in so many other countries. And so I also have to wonder, though, that in the 2020 election, 58% of Democrats voted by mail compared to just 29% of Republicans. And Republicans worked to close that gap in the 2024 election, but it still skews heavily Democrat. Do you think that's a factor in this narrative that is starting to be spun?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I had that in my notes as well, those exact numbers. 58% of Democrats voted by mail in 2020. And I think that number would be an awful lot higher if there weren't, and as I remember in 2020, there were dedicated efforts to make that difficult. There was a lot of last minute closing of poll places or moving them, every state, in all honesty, every state was sort of left to their own devices. There was no real coordinated federal response on how to handle elections in the face of a global pandemic. So everyone kind of did the best they could, but I feel like the Democrats got much better messaging out to get that stuff done by mail, to use this. Hardly anybody had interacted with it prior to this point. So to answer your question, 100%, how could it not? 58% of Democrats voted in 2020, which means, and he lost the 2020 election that way. So probably no coincidence that all of a sudden. Also, let's talk about, a few days after meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska, all of a sudden he's coming back talking, you know what, actually, voting machines and mail-in balloting is bad. Interesting.
Yeah,
Taking
the
some notes from a guy
timing was
who's been
suspect.
taking some notes from a guy who's been elected every year since 2020 or every election or 2000, I should say. Old big bad Vlad over there in Russia, democratically elected. Come on, man. Come on. Everyone sees what you're doing.
He also joked with Zelensky, like, oh, well, if we're involved in a war in 3.5 years, can we just call off the election? So I think you're onto something there where it might not be fraud or inaccuracies. There might be other motives involved in this kind of messaging for sure. Need a reset or just a chance to slow down? Trade the traffic and to-do lists for a glass of wine and an open sky at Walla Walla. Just a scenic 4-hour drive from Boise, this peaceful destination in the heart of the Pacific Northwest offers a true escape from your hectic schedule. You'll have the opportunity to wander through more than 130 wineries nestled among golden hills and vineyards, and then cozy up in a tasting room. You can stroll through the charming historic downtown by day, and at night, dine al fresco on meals made by celebrated chefs from fresh ingredients grown just down the road on local farms. Come discover why Walla Walla is one of the Pacific Northwest's best-kept secrets. You don't have to go far to feel far away. Plan your getaway at wallawalla.org today. Okay, Matthew, for our second segment, we get to play everybody's favorite game. Do you earn enough money to actually comfortably live with a living wage in Ada County? And we all got to assess that this week with a story from the Idaho Statesman. So I'm curious, do you earn a living wage in Ada County?
Currently, right this second, I do, but I spent most of my life being nowhere close, according to this article, which is eye-opening, I should say. Yeah.
I was going through the list and I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And then I went through. So just to give everybody some background, currently the Idaho minimum wage is $7.25 per hour, just like the federal minimum wage. Now, other jobs pay more than that, but that is, the basement. That is the floor. They have to pay that. And according to a study by MIT, someone would need to make at least 3.5 times more than the federal minimum wage to afford basic needs like housing and food costs in Ada County. So that would end up being $53,394 before taxes, just for one person. And I saw that and I was like, oh, okay, I don't know that's pretty high. That's more than I've definitely made at some jobs. But then they had a whole chart with if you're a single adult with no children, if you're two adults with two children. And Matthew, I have to say, I gasped because for two working adults with 3 children, which is what my family is, you have to be making $38.08. And as a NICU nurse, a neonatal intensive nurse with 4 years of experience, I was not making that wage. I was not making a living wage in Ada County, and I was shocked.
If we're playing the game, can you afford to live in Ada County? The answer is probably not, right? So yeah, that $53,394, that's $25.67 an hour for a single person with no kids. Compare that to the median income of a single person in Ada County, which, again, according to Dr. Google, $42,419. So if you're in the middle, you don't make enough to live here. I have sour news for you, friends. And it seems to get even worse the more children that you add, and if you're living with a partner or a spouse. I think it ends up being something like you need to be making over 6 figures.
Oh, for a single adult with 3 children, you have to be making $72.58 an hour. Not many people are making that in the Treasure Valley, but I do know single parents with 3 children. I know quite a few of them. So how can we bridge this gap? We have this data. I was reading this data. I was shocked, but then it's just the story was anyways, here's this information. It feels like this gap is widening. If people are feeling pinched living in Ada County, I think that makes sense. That feels accurate.
Yeah, it's not just, it's a lot of things, obviously. It's tariffs, it's things are costing more, it's all of those things. But yeah, it's just really, and we've known this for quite some time, right? Real wages are not keeping up, and they have not been for quite some time. And I think that the pandemic. I mean, I hate to bring everything back to COVID-19, but the pandemic, I think, started to highlight a lot of those disparities in our country, and now we're seeing a lot of that as well with tariffs and purchasing of consumer goods and all of those things. But yeah, the reality is most folks can't. So there's a lot of what that means is I think that means there's a lot of reliance on social safety nets that are also conveniently being cut and drawn back and all that too. So really kind of what is a family to do? And I don't have any good answers. I just know we're just getting absolutely creamed, even compared to other states where the minimum wage is it's what is it? It's way higher in almost all of our neighboring states than it is here. It's just like we're paying the absolute. When they say minimum wage, that means they wish they could pay you less. But here's the absolute minimum we have to pay you as a human being, and that's alarming. That stinks.
Oh yeah, when you compare us to our neighboring states, like Washington state minimum wage is $16.66. Oregon is $15.05. Montana is $10.55. And so I think people see that and they're like, well, yeah, that's just still the minimum wage, but it pushes everything else further. So like nurses in Oregon are making quite a bit more than nurses in Idaho. And I've worked in different healthcare settings in Idaho where nurses are leaving because they can just hop over the Oregon border and make like $20,000 more a year. When we talk about teacher shortages, healthcare worker shortages, a factor in that is that you can make so much more money somewhere else. So why would you stay here? Like, why would you stay?
There's so many more reasons, unfortunately, to leave. I know you've done recent episodes about, OBGYN doctors leaving and skilled laborers leaving. And like, why wouldn't they? Oh, it's really making it really tough to live here. I mean, we love Boise, we love Idaho. It's a beautiful place to live, but it certainly is not loving us back.
Do you think that we will reach a point where there is enough pressure that wages are bolstered and they do pick up? Or do you think it's just going to kind of inch along until more and more people decide, I mean, it's beautiful here, but it's maybe just not worth it if we can't even get a living wage?
Right. It's beautiful here. It's beautiful lots of places, right? And lots of places pay better, unfortunately. I don't know what that's going to take. It's so funny, right? I mean, it makes me think of the fight for 15. And that fight has been going on for so long that $15 doesn't even cut it anymore. So we're just not keeping up. And it's going to take a considerable amount of voter will and I think politicians listening to people to figure that out, whether that's increasing the social safety net. Maybe we talk about a universal basic income to help people cover that gap. We have the money probably somewhere. We're spending it on weird things. Let's spend it on ourselves. I don't know what the answer is, but it is just getting worse. And it's making it's a really tough pitch to stick around if you're in any kind of position where you can leave. And a lot of people aren't. That's the other tricky thing about all of this is that, if you don't like it, leave. Well, that's easier said than done. And also, it makes me really worried about folk who are under that median line, which has got to be most of us. It sounds like median nothing. It's no one can afford to live here. So folks are living in tough situations. Maybe they're living with a partner or a spouse that's not a good situation, or they're living in a tough housing situation and they're just sort of dealing. And that's not sustainable.
Our first pick of the week is brought to you by Visit Walla Walla, and their pick is the Walla Walla Fair. It's actually the oldest fair in Washington, going strong for 159 years. And to celebrate, Foreigner is headlining. And then you should definitely check out the Demolition Derby. That event always sells out, so you'll need to get those tickets early. And don't miss 3 days of PRCA rodeo. And of course, there's going to be all the fair classics. So there's rides, food, tons of exhibits, and it runs from August 27th through the 31st at Walla Walla County Fairgrounds. So it's the perfect excuse to get out of town for a fun-filled getaway to a very charming place in Washington State. So thank you so much for that first pick of the week, Visit Walla Walla. Okay, Matthew, what is your pick of the week this week?
Okay, so I am a big old airplane dork, like World War II planes. And good news for people like me, the Warbird Roundup is happening this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, the 23rd and the 24th. So if you are listening to this on Friday, run, don't walk to the Warhawk Air Museum this coming weekend. It's Idaho's largest 2-day gathering of historic warplanes from across the country. There are a few that like live out there, and then there's a bunch more that come into Nampa, that fly into Nampa. They're going to be doing flyby demonstrations all weekend. A lot of like truly like World War II fighter planes, bombers, that sort of thing. There'll be opportunities to walk into some of them. Like they'll be open, some of the bigger ones. You can like walk through them. There'll be pilots on hand to educate the crowd, interesting facts, their importance to our country. There'll be food trucks and vendors and a kids zone. And of course the museum will be open for full access to the museum and the displays. I have not been out there in a while, I will confess, but the museum is fascinating. It's the Warhawk Air Museum because there's a Warhawk fighter plane, like that's like the big showpiece there. But they're going to have so many more airplanes. They'll be flying. They'll be on the ground. You'll be able to check them out.
Oh, that is such a great pick of the week. I actually have a plane super fan. I can't even say aficionado, like ultra super fan in my family. And he loves everything about planes, knows everything about so many planes. We're frequent guests at the Warhawk Museum. So this is fantastic. You should probably chat with him. He would love to talk all things warplanes with you.
Oh man, I would absolutely nerd out. Let's do it. I'll get some info after we're done here. But in the meantime, Lindsay, what do you got? What's your pick of the week this week?
I am so excited. I saw a Boise Dev article that there's a new cooking studio / bookstore opening in Meridian. I love cooking. I like eating, and I like bookstores. So this is a perfect fit for me. I actually stopped in yesterday. I was so excited. I wanted to check it out. And it is one of the coolest shops I've ever seen. So in the front half, it's a bookstore. There's a whole wall of cookbooks, but then they also have all other kinds of books, children's books, adult books, books for teens. They have plush chairs, they have tables. And then the back half is this huge kitchen area with ovens and hot plates and a huge butcher block island and all these different like cooking stations. And they have all kinds of cooking classes, from really beginner classes like getting to know about bread to more advanced, like, here, let's try some French cooking techniques. And the owner was actually a family and consumer science teacher. So she's got a background teaching. She's got a background teaching this subject. And I got a chance to talk with her a little bit. And she talked about how she wanted this to be kind of a third space for the community. We don't have a lot of those in Meridian. So you could come take a cooking class, and there's all these tables and chairs. So come read a book, come relax, come just be in this space with friends, family. Like we were already talking about, we want to take our kids and maybe do a cooking class here. So I just am so excited. The shop is called Cooks and Books.
That's so incredible. Like, definitely it's giving two great tastes that go great together vibes, right? And I'm digging everybody's, these small business owners and their inventiveness by combining two concepts into one place. It makes me think of like Old Speak, for example, the book bar in Garden City. And like, yeah, would either of these things be enough by themselves? Hard to say, but you put them both together, there's probably lots of overlap. Like from a usage standpoint, people who are coming for one are going to come for the other. That's so rad. And to your point about third spaces, we love anybody who's developing a third space.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to break down these topics and share your pick of the week with us.
Yeah, absolutely. A lovely weekend to all of you. We'll catch you next time.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show is produced by Evelyn Avitia, Frankie Barnhill, Lizzie Goldsmith, Natalie Rivera, Adrian Gonzalez, and me, Lindsay Van Allen. Blake Hunter writes our Hey Boise newsletter, and our music is by Up Is the Down Is The and All the Kimonos. If you enjoyed our show today, leave us a review. It helps other people find us. We'll be back on Monday with a look at an Idaho pastor's influence over the Secretary of Defense. You won't want to miss it.